Today I'd like to talk about the cinema in Malahide. Now, my first encounter with the cinema in Malahide was, I was so young I hardly remember it, but it was down in Gem Cinema, which was located down at the Green. Pat Inglesby, the local poet, he explained to me where it was exactly. It was down a lane beside his house, which was at the back of Strand Street, and it was owned by Pop O'Brien. But I remember going with my sisters to this cinema. I have a feeling it wasn't any later than 1950. It was actually a building, and there was a hole in the back of it, and the actual projection and all that was in a sort of a caravan at the back, which projected it through the wall of the cinema so that the caravan could be moved. And it might have gone back to the days when cinemas used to go around, travel around the country, you know. Now, the first real encounter, proper encounter that I remember well in the cinema, of course, was what was called the New Cinema. And that was up on the main street. The New Cinema was called the Grand Cinema. Now, mind you, half the cinemas in Ireland were called Grand Cinemas in those days. This was in the 50s, the golden age of cinema. Everywhere you went, cinema was the thing. Television was still in its infancy, so people went to the cinema regularly. They got their newsreels even in the cinema. This cinema was a fine building. It was roughly where the Bank of Ireland is today. If you looked at it, on its left, you had Sammy Wells' shop, the sweet shop of great fame because they made the sweets there in the factory. Then on the right-hand side of it, they had built a hotel called the McGill Arms. Now, that was actually the owner, Masie Walsh, who we'll talk about shortly. She owned and built the cinema, and her daughter married a McGill, and McGill's ran the McGill Arms Hotel. So mind you, I don't think ever was much of a hotel. It's more of a ballroom cum pub. Now to talk about the cinema itself and the owner. The owner was the doctor's wife. Now, Dr. Walsh was the dispensary, we called him doctor, and his wife was Mrs. Walsh, but she got known as Masie Walsh. Where she got it from, I don't know. As I understood, she was a nurse in the First World War, and he was a doctor in the First World War. And what was noticeable actually about him was certain characteristics. Older people in Malahide will remember. One thing was, on his neck he had a strange scar. People said that was a bullet he got during the war. That was one thing. And the other thing was, he always drove a lovely car, a Jag or something like that, and always had a red feather in the front. And even though every time when he changed his car, the red feather stayed in the front. This was typical of him. Now, he lived up on the Grove Road. They had a lovely big house there. And obviously they had some family money or something, because not only did she build a cinema, she built a hotel in Portmarnock, which she bought and sold. It's now Sands Hotel, bought and sold a few times, and I think she lost money every time. She was a woman that loved doing things, but I don't think she was a great businesswoman. Now, as a character, she would be there on the spot herself. She was a big woman. She was a big build of a woman. And the kids would be half terrified of her, because she'd come in with a big torch, and she's liable, if you didn't sit down the front on the wooden benches down the front of the cinema, if you strayed up at the back, or if you gave any cheek or anything like that, she'd be down with the old torch. And there was always a fear of getting a clout with it. Now, I'm not sure she ever clouted any kid, really, but there was that fear all the time that she would, because she was quite a harsh woman, appeared quite a harsh woman. But as I found out years later, she was a very kind-hearted person actually behind it all. She was genuinely interested in the kids of Malahide and the fact that they had a cinema. Because she was saying, the cinema, it doesn't pay money or anything, but what would the kids do on a Saturday or Sunday if they hadn't got the cinema to go to? And it was successful for a while. In those days, every cinema was successful, until coming up into the middle of the 60s, television was beginning to get popular, cinema audiences were dropping, and then the cinema was getting into a bit of trouble. The cinema finally closed up. I don't remember the last showing or anything in it, but it became a ballroom. They put in a beautiful maple floor in it. And then later on, there was a fire, and it got destroyed in fire, or very badly damaged in the fire. So I don't know. There was all sorts of rumours whether it was on purpose, and I doubt it. I think it was just an accidental thing. And then what happened was, like everything else, its time had come, and the whole lot was redeveloped, and it was developed into the supermarket, which was Hogan's Supermarket, then later became Super Value, as we know it today. But that's sort of all I can remember about the cinema, really, insofar as, like everything else, it goes through a cycle, and it had its day, and then just disappeared.